You are listening to the Wealth Formula Podcast with Buck Joffrey. Get ready to change your life.
Welcome, everybody. This is Buck Joffrey with the Wealth Formula Podcast, coming to you from Montecito, California. And today, before we begin, I want to remind you, as usual, that there is a website associated with this podcast. It's called wealthformula.com. Lots of resources there for you, including the opportunity, if you so choose, to join our accredited investor group. Basically, if you are an accredited investor and you're looking for potential deal flow, you just sign up there, and then you get onboarded with our group, and then you get to see what's out there. This is a combination of things that perhaps I might be involved with, and some things that I'm not, that I'm sharing because I think they are worth your time and consideration. Anyway, go check it out, wealthformula.com. Sign up for the Accredited Investor Club. Now, let's talk today about something that I've addressed this before, but it's the illusion of job security. And, most people think that having a job is the safest way to secure their financial future, right? I think that's kind of just conventional wisdom. They wake up every day, punch the clock, and assume as long as they keep doing their job, they're safe. But let me tell you something to wake you up a bit. If you don't know already, a job isn't necessarily as safe as it seems. In fact, it can be one of the most dangerous financial positions you can be in if that's your only position. And when you work for someone, you see, you're living in a bubble. That's the reality. And that is something that I think everybody needs to understand. You get your paycheck every 2 weeks, you have benefits, and you think, I'm set, right? But what you don't see is what's happening behind the scenes that you do, like when you own a business, right? You don't see the financial health of the company that you work for. You don't see the decision-making process in the boardroom, the market pressures that might be squeezing your employees' margins. You don't see the icebergs until it's too late. You know what? Your employer's financial struggles are hidden from you. And even though wages have been going up, the last couple of years with inflation, the reality is that again is just an illusion. That's just to keep people. But, it could be very well the case that the first time you realize that your company is in trouble is that when you're handed a pink slip. And then what? You're left scrambling, wondering what went wrong, right? You were doing a good job. You were liked. You were productive. And suddenly that safe job doesn't seem so safe anymore. Let me be clear. This isn't about quitting your job tomorrow. I'm not one of those guys who's going to tell you to do that, right? This is just about realizing that your job should be just one part of your financial portfolio. You see, the truly wealthy don't rely on one source of income. And when I say truly wealthy, I'm not just talking about people who have more money than you. I'm talking about they're truly wealthy, even if they have less money than you. They understand the power of diversification. They understand that putting all your eggs in one basket is a recipe for disaster. I call it single point failure. You can do that. You can do that in entrepreneurship too, by the way. You can just have all of your ducks in one row. I've seen plenty of entrepreneurs do that, where all they do is continue to invest in the same business, and the next thing you know, that business gets decimated and they're left with nothing. But let's go back to the job thing. Think of it this way. If you lose your job and it's your only source of income, you're in a vulnerable position. But if you have multiple streams of income, and I'm not advocating for anything in particular, could be from side gigs, could be from investments in real estate, or even owning a small business, you have a safety net. You have options. And that's what true financial security is all about, having options. So going outside of your comfort zone of your job is not risky. I've heard too many people say that throughout time. Like, it's not me. A job is, I'm just a job guy. I don't like all the risky stuff. The reality is going outside of your comfort zone of your job is not risky. Not doing so is the bigger risk. I want you to start thinking of yourself as the CEO of your own sort of life and your personal finances or your business. And just like a company needs to diversify its revenue streams, manage its risks, and always be aware of its financial health, so do you. You need to treat your finances like a business. make sure you are aware of your blind spots. We all have them, but the key is to identify them before they become problems. In your financial life, a blind spot could be over-reliance, again, on a single income source. It could be a lack of emergency savings. It could be not enough investing in assets that grow over time. Now, the good news is that once you're aware of your blind spots, you can do something about them. You can start diversifying your income, investing in cash flowing assets, build a financial plan that's robust and resilient. But how do you actually do this? Okay, well, we talk about this on this show all the time, but here's a few strategies, just a reminder. Start with side gigs, right? Side gigs. I mean, if you're not really, sold on this, try something simple. You could do some freelancing, right? There's like freelancing websites. If you happen to be something really good at something, maybe you're a writer, maybe you're good at doing various, tasks, consider freelancing. Consulting. Many of you have significant skills. Consider consulting or an online business. The key is to start generating income outside of your job one way or another. And just for reference, at one point in my life, Wealth Formula as a podcast, it's just a hobby. It is now my primary business, right? That's how these things work. Sometimes you just try some things out, and the next thing you know, you're onto something. It takes on a life of its own. Next, consider business acquisitions or franchise. We had Kim Daly on. Again, this is an area that's going to require a little bit more risk, but can have significant outcomes that are really good for you. Be a great way to create an additional income stream that's independent of your job. And the next thing you know, you could find yourself in a situation where that seems like it's something that's wise to expand on, and that becomes your primary thing. And then finally, obviously, there's investing in cash flowing assets. Of course, you know that real estate is one of my favorites. For high-paid professionals, W-2 wage earners, one of the things that I've been a big advocate for to consider is these VRBOs, these short-term rentals. They are a particularly good option for W-2 wage earners because you can literally use depreciation to offset your W-2 income. That is, of course, if you follow the rules set forth by the IRS. That is a coup, though. I mean, it is something. I think if I was a W-2 income person, one of the first things I probably would do is try to figure out how I could take advantage of this VRBO thing. Anyway, whatever you choose, the goal is to have multiple streams of income that aren't tied to your day job. Again, financial freedom isn't about having a high-paying job. It's about having control over your financial future. It's about having options. It's not about being at the mercy of your employer's decisions. Remember, your job is just one part of your financial portfolio. Don't let it be the only part. Start thinking like a business owner. Diversify your income. Protect yourself from icebergs that you can't see. That's the real path to financial security and freedom. Now, my guest today on Wealth Formula Podcast has a very similar philosophy, and it's probably not surprising because it sounds like she was inspired by Robert Kiyosaki as well. And she is a CPA that used to work for the IRS, different approach. And, it sounds like she has some programs as well. Just to be very clear on, before we do this, I always like to do this with guests, is, she has programs, in her own group and stuff like that. I have no financial affiliation with anything that she's doing, and I'm actually don't have a lot of familiarity with it. Just be clear that this is, for educational purposes only. That being said, we'll have that interview right after these messages. Welcome back to the show, everyone. And today, my guest on Wealth Formula Podcast is Dr. Sherry Jackson. She is a retired IRS agent, a CPA, and certified fraud examiner who's helped over 100,000 individuals and businesses keep, protect, and grow their earnings using her proprietary KPG system. With over 35 years of experience, she's an expert in tax reduction and wealth building. And through her speaking, books, and consulting, she's shared her wealth of knowledge to educate, but also to create lasting wealth and security. She's the author of impactful books like How to Escape the Rat Race, and she has a big social media following of about 44,000 people. Dr. Jackson, welcome to Wealth Formula Podcast.
And thank you, Buck, for having me on.
So You have an interesting background, especially with, the IRS and all of that. And I was asking you offline, what do you think what's the message you need to get out there? And actually surprised me a little bit. You wanted to warn people about what's going on out there in the current geopolitical environment. So let's move on with it. So what do we need to know?
First of all, people need to know that governments, specifically in the United States, do not have your best interest at heart. You see what's going on for the last 60, 70, even 80 years. Nothing has changed, and the rich keep getting richer, and the poor and the middle class continue to suffer. There's something going wrong. The gurus are out there telling you to invest in certain things, and it's not working for people. I talk to people daily, and they've been trying this, that, and the other, and they're still trapped in the rat race. So there are other ways that are not something that's out in the social media, sometimes in the social media, but not in the mainstream media, that are getting people wealthy. And so I try to let people know, don't hesitate to try something that might be unconventional, but because the things that you've been learning haven't been working. Like Robert Kiyosaki has been on the unconventional path. He's talking about gold. He's talking about other ways besides the stock market for people to get wealthy.
Right, sure. Well, that's a big ethos of this show, as you may or may not know. I consider Robert Kiyosaki actually one of my mentors. Tell us sort of how how did you come to realize this, having been through sort of a traditional, through the IRS and sort of these traditional mainstream platforms. How did you, get to this understanding?
Well, we all taught the traditional way. My dad told me that when I was 18 years old, I was getting out. So I definitely had to make a plan back then. And since I was decent in math and made good grades, I went on to college and decided that I was going to be a CPA. And, basically a CPA can do lots of things. They can teach at a school, they can work at a CPA firm, they can work in industry, and they can have their own business. And basically I went through almost all of those and discovered that although I had this knowledge that I was taught in school, it wasn't helping people to achieve the American dream. They were trapped in a rat race with a job, and they were going through the earn spend cycle every single week or month. Whenever they got paid, they paid out their bills and they went, to party. And then, Monday it was rinse and repeat. They were doing the same thing. So something wasn't working, even though they were being told about different ways to grow wealth. So I started hearing from other people that are on social media, and they became my mentors. Of course, one of them from afar is Robert Kiyosaki. I did get a chance to speak on stage with him in Montana not too long ago. And the things that used to work aren't working, and the things that we need to do are more of a unconventional. For example, I teach people a stair step to wealth, and the bottom of that is insurance. Of course, we should have insurance. A lot of people, believe it or not, but don't have basic insurances. And that throws their families into a tailspin if someone gets sick or if someone passes away. And after that is assurance. And what I mean by that, I think some of the people are being told to save a month worth of expenses or $1,000. I tell my people, save 6 months in expenses. You have to sacrifice. You can't sit and watch football or sports or whatever all weekend. You've got to come up with a plan. So those are the hard things that you have to do, but we have to make those decisions so that we can thrive instead of surviving every day.
What'd you learn at the IRS?
I learned that our money is being stolen. I do not believe that the income tax is fair. It's being misrepresented and misapplied to the American people. Let me give you a basic example. Buck, if I come to your house and I knock on your door and I said, I want to cut your grass, and you have a front and a backyard, we agreed that I'm going to cut your grass for $100. I'm using my brain, my arms, and my legs to cut your grass in exchange for $100. That's an exchange. Our Declaration of Independence says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal with certain unalienable rights. So that means I have the unalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which means taking care of myself and my family without interference. To juxtapose that, let's say the smallest Walmart in the country made $100,000 yesterday, but they have to pay the salaries, they have to pay the rent, they have to pay the utilities, And when it all shakes out, their expenses for that day yesterday were $60,000. Well, they're not paying tax on the $100,000 that they earned. They're paying tax on $40,000. So our life force is not being taken into consideration. And I believe that the people need to have strategies in place to make sure that they keep much more of what they earn than they are now. And those aren't being taught out there. The things that I do are unconventional for the most part, but they will help people keep, protect, and grow what they earn without getting into any situations with the IRS and without getting any other trouble.
So let's give us an example. For example, we have, I would say, a disproportionate number of healthcare professionals listening to this. I'm an ex-surgeon myself, a real estate investor now, and an entrepreneur. But give us an example of somebody who maybe is making a really good income, making $400,000, $500,000 a year as a surgeon. That used to be my past, but it's all W-2 income. What do you do? I mean, I remember, what's interesting. I remember when I was the first year I came out of training, I remember that the amount of tax I paid in the first month of my career actually exceeded the amount of money I made in the entire last year of my residency. So that's a tough one, though, right? You've got the golden handcuffs. So what would be an example of what somebody like that could do?
Well, actually, Buck, I do have a doctor client. He makes over $350,000 a year. And he came to me and said, I can't do this with this W-2 thing. I'm married. I don't have a house yet, and they're killing me in taxes. Well, one of the thing that you did, we started him a business, and we found him some unconventional investing avenues so that although he's not an accredited investor, he still gets the benefits of getting the kind of returns that they get without falling into the stock market and falling prey to that. So we started a home-based business, and that is my major thing. When you have a home-based business, you can write off everything but the kitchen sink legally because it's out there. And most people don't know that. They don't know that their cell phones, their internet, and those kinds of things are deductible. Every 2 miles they drive is $1. So teaching them, educating people on the fact that if you have a home-based business and you do have that high income, like most of the clients that I have, then there are ways to mitigate that. And we can just whittle down to $200,000 or $300,000 as much as we can. And in the beginning, of course, you're going to have losses when you first start a business. And they didn't understand that those losses on your business are going to offset some of the W-2 income.
Right. What kinds of businesses do you see, home-based businesses? I mean, it sounds, I can just imagine somebody sitting at home going, yeah, that doesn't sound that easy. I mean, what am I going to do? And how is that going to create any kind of income like I currently have with my, my surgical career?
Right. So for somebody like a doctor, they're going to, because their time is so limited, like my client, there are just a few things that they can do in the evenings or on the weekends on the side to generate more income. For example, we're working in the investment arena, we're working in the real estate arena with him. But for those who have a little bit more time, they may make six figures, but they have their weekends and they have their evenings. There are plenty of things that they can do. Specifically, I tout starting some kind of a home-based business that is digital, not something that's going to accumulate a whole bunch of inventory in your garage or anything like that. But there are so many different digital businesses. For example, writing a book. I have 8 books and I make money in my sleep because when I wake up, people like today, I woke up and someone had purchased a book sometime in the middle of the night. Well, that might be a little candy money for some people, but with that home-based business, whatever that is, it can generate other things like speaking engagements and other avenues for that person to gain more. But even if they have losses, then they can, again, offset that against their W-2s. I don't advocate anybody quitting their job at all. What I advocate is when you get off work, whenever that is, you take some time to decompress, spend some time with your family, eat your dinner. But as opposed to turning on the television, which I call the electronic income reducer or the electronic intellect reducer, then take some time with your family, eat your food, and then start working on that home-based business. My goal for my clients is, because there are so many pink slips coming out, I'm sure Book, There are a lot of corporations that are laying off people like crazy, 12,000, 10,000 being laid off nationwide. And a lot of my clients are afraid of getting a pink slip. So them starting a home-based business is going to kill two birds with one stone. Keep your job, you have your benefits, but when you start and grow that home-based business now, what you get to do is you get to grow it. And if you do get a pink slip, then you're going to either have the chance to bridge that gap between this job and the next job by having income coming in, or some of them which can decide just not to get another job and scale that business to the point where they're comfortable with that business and not with the job.
It's interesting. It reminds me of a conversation I had with my 15-year-old daughter yesterday, and she was asking about, what kind of jobs and wouldn't it sometimes be easier to have a job than have a business and that kind of thing. And it was a good learning moment for her, because what I said to her is I said, listen, right now, there are a lot of entrepreneurs like me who are having down years, right? I mean, real estate has been a tough place to be. Interest rates went way up. I mean, at disproportionately high rates. And, this kind of stuff happens every 7-8 years, maybe decade or whatever, these meltdowns. Business in general, I think right now, small business owners are suffering more than the economy per se shows it. And I think that's going to all come out in the wash. But what's interesting is that wages have been going up. I mean, now, most recently, they kind of slowed down, but they've been going up. And people with a job have been feeling good, but it's an artificial good, because the big difference between the business owner and somebody who has a job is that person with a job has no idea what the true security of their job actually is, because they never get a chance to see how the business that they're working in is actually doing. So the first indication they may get of the business not doing well is a pink slip. Right. And all of a sudden you go from being, at the top of the world expecting your next paycheck to being told, sorry, you don't have a job anymore. So it's a completely artificial sense of security. Now, doctors sometimes will argue that, well, maybe my situation is a little different. They need me. Well, that may be a little bit more secure, but I will tell you that even that, I've seen situations where large corporations have come in, bought out, hospitals and downsized and all that kind of thing. So I'm just curious on your take on that.
You're exactly right. People don't understand that, their job is at jeopardy. It's like hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil sometimes.
Right.
But the ones that are smart, they see that the writing on the wall. And yes, I do believe that doctors and certain other professions are more secure. And you're, explaining to me that they also get pink slips. And I'm sure that they can bounce back and get another job. But really, Buck, the majority of the people in the United States, we become a service nation. We used to be a manufacturing nation, a nation that built things. And our backbone is the small business, but things have changed. Things have gone offshore, and we're mostly a service nation. And yes, salaries went up. There are some places that minimum wages has gone up to $15 an hour, and they were cheering that on until they realized that these companies couldn't sustain that. And a lot of companies are laying off, and not only that, some of them are closing. So we cannot depend on someone else for our resources. What I teach my clients is to try to have multiple streams of income. So if your job fails, you have maybe some real estate that's bringing in money, or you may have your home-based business or two different businesses that are going on. We are taught to diversify. That's what I teach my people. Diversify. Don't ever depend on just one stream of income. So if one thing goes down, and you're right, things are tight right now. The economy is changing, and I'm seeing it and feeling it also. But then if you have multiple streams of income, then all of them aren't going to go down at the same time. So that's another thing that I teach the clients. Yeah,
one of the things I'll add to that, because I've had that concept in my head for many years now, for over a decade, and implementing that, and it's certainly been of use to me. The other thing I'll add to that is that multiple streams of income, the element that I think sometimes people don't remember is they should not be in the same industry either, right? Because sometimes... and I've gotten kind of burned on that at times too myself, is thinking I have multiple streams of income, but then one gets hurt and it hurts other streams of income too because they're too related. So I just want to add that little piece of personal pain just to educate people out there as well.
You're exactly right. You're
Right.
exactly right. When I say multiple streams of income, I do mean separate things. For example,
Yeah.
you got real estate, and then you have a consulting business, and then you have books, and then you have
Right.
something else going on in a partnership or a collaboration with someone else. So all those things working at the same time are
Right.
not going to fail.
Right, right. One thing that I think would be useful to address, since with your background, especially in your interest and with Robert Kiyosaki's work, is I think it's probably a useful time to review what exactly is the cash flow quadrant and why is that important? Because I think that's for me actually, back in 2008 or 2009, when I first discovered Robert Kiyosaki by accident by reading a book that was sitting in a Mexican airport on the way back from my honeymoon at the time. I read this book called The Cashflow Quadrant, and for me, that was the biggest eye-opener I probably ever had in my life. It was like a lightning bolt, and completely changed me and turned me into an entrepreneur. Tell us what the Cashflow Quadrant tells us.
Okay, so there are 4 quadrants in the cash flow quadrant. You are an employee, that's the E. If you are an employee, you have a job. The other one is S, self-employed. If you're self-employed, you own a job. Then you go over to the other side of the quadrant, and then you have a B, which is a business owner. If you're a business owner, you have people working for you and systems in place. And then the last one at the bottom is an I. You're an investor, and you have money working for you. So what I try to do is get my clients from the employee and the self-employed quadrant over to the business owner and the investment quadrant. And it takes them coming out of their comfort zone. A lot of people are stuck in their circumstances, which is circumstances mean you're stuck in a circle looking out at whatever else is going on, and they're in these comfort zones. So you have to change your mindset, get out of your comfort zone, and be willing to put in the work to move from that E and S quadrant over to the B and I.
Yeah, and let me just add some color to that for people. Employment, the E quadrant is basically your straight up W-2, right? You go to work, you get your salary, whatever, however that works for you, and you get your W-2 and they take taxes out. The S is a lot of self-employed physicians, lawyers, whatever, that you have sort of your practice. Now, you in this situation, you own a job. You don't own a business. You own a job. Without you, it's non-functional. And one of the biggest problems there, especially if you don't structure it correctly through your entities, is that you are going to pay an additional tax called a self-employment tax, which is, you can probably help me with this, what it was like 12, 13%. It's insane. So you are actually getting even more heavily taxed than somebody who's doing a W-2. The business quadrant is a true business, right? Now, Robert initially had defined that as being a much bigger business with several hundred employees and that kind of thing. In reality, I think that you can get a lot of the perks of being in that category simply by making some changes through your entities, making sure that the business is less dependent on you, etc. I personally have looked at the easiest way for most people in the W-2 quadrant, the employment quadrant, is to go straight to the investor quadrant. I mean, that to me is like sort of the easiest thing to do. Love your comments on that.
Yes, the problem that I have, well, they have with most people, they don't have the resources to do that to the degree that it needs to be done.
Right.
They've been in that earn spend cycle, and they've gone to the mall and they've bought their Gucci and their Coach and all that other stuff like that, and they don't have the resources to do that investing correctly. So it's all about changing their mindsets. What I tell people in my training classes and my clients is people will tell you, but oh, I'm self-employed. No, they'll say, I'm a business owner. I said, no, you're self-employed.
Or you own a job.
Between the self-employed, yes. And if this is what I tell them, okay, so if you get sick or you go on vacation, when you're self-employed, the money stops.
Right.
But when you have a business and you get sick or go on vacation, the money continues to flow. So going from the employee straight over to the investor would be great. That's if they have put themselves in the financial position or the mindset to do the investing. The clients that are in the 90 to maybe even $250,000 range have spent all the money on frivolous stuff,
Yeah.
and they have not done the saving to do the investing. That would be great for them to do. Some of them that have done that, they've progressed pretty far. But it seems like I have to spend a lot of time helping to change mindsets. But
Right, right. What are your thoughts about, you talked about sort of the geopolitical concerns you have. We have an election coming up. Have you looked at sort of the tax implications of the election? Kind of would love to get your thoughts on sort of, what the issues are, what's at stake, and what each candidate might consider doing.
okay, so I'm very, very outspoken about finance. I mean, about the political situation. So I don't vote because I believe that changing the players without changing the game is an act in futility. And I don't see a lot of difference. I think they're doing a kabuki dance where, whether one or other parties in office, nothing has changed much for the average everyday American over the last 80 years. I've looked at that. So they're talking about they're different in front of us, but they're backslapping each other and going to parties together behind our backs. So as far as that's concerned, you have to look at it from the financial standpoint of what is it going to cost the policies? What are those policies going to cost in the long run for the American people? For example, if you're going to get rid of the loans and all these kinds of things, then what is it going to cost the average person?
And you're speaking there about like educational loans, like the I think the Biden administration wanted to basically erase all of that
Right.
student debt. Right.
Right. See, every election they promise all these things to the people, and it wasn't just the student debt; it was medical debt
Medical
also.
debt.
Okay, so where's the money going to come from
Right.
to take care of that? So they make promises. 9 times out of 10, they don't come through with the promises, and people continue just to believe these people. It's incredible. And looking at the policies of either of these people, I'm looking at what is it going to do to help our businesses, our small businesses, and what is it going to do to help average Joe and Jane on the street? I'm really appalled at the fact that people are still not looking at it from that financial standpoint. We had a situation in September of 2008. The stock market went down 777 points in one day, and Americans lost $10.2 trillion in savings. And it didn't just disappear. It flowed over to the banks that couldn't fail and these companies that couldn't fail, and the golden parachutes that were given to the CEOs that did all this derivative stuff. I'm not understanding why people don't take into effect that they've done this to us before. It's coming from our resources. I want to spend my resources, Buck, on what I want to spend my resources on. So when you have a business, you get your revenues coming in, but you get to deduct everything before taxes are taken out.
Sure.
So if you're going to do good tax avoidance, not tax evasion, if you do good tax avoidance, which is totally legal, then you, along with a whole bunch of other corporations, won't be paying taxes, or will be paying very little taxes. That's the one thing about this. I look at their policies. What are your financial consequences of the policies that you have put into place?
Right. Yeah, and the one thing that you're absolutely right on is that if you go back and you look at how economies have fared under both parties, there actually is virtually zero difference. But I mean, we can look at smaller things, like, for example, like taxes, et cetera, generally speaking, have generally benefited, Republican stances have benefited people with a little bit more money, which, frankly, at least with this audience, they're probably happy about. We're generally, we're generally happy about less taxes. But yeah, you're right about that.
Right.
What else is on your mind? I want to make sure we cover the major issues that are important to you.
Right. And to go back to that, to piggyback on that, during the Trump years, honestly, my business made more money than it ever made. And also, he put in place that extra 20% off. That really helped. So if you brought in, let's say for simple numbers, if you brought in 100K net, you didn't have to pay tax on the 100K, you had to pay tax on the 80K.
Right.
So that helped out a whole lot during those years. After that, everything just hit the skids and kept going down. And it's these policies that are planned, they are a disaster because people are not looking at where the money's coming from. I think some of them don't really care as long as it's not coming from them. And what I call the corporatocracy is about to do some things to people that's going to be a lot of damage. The corporations, the government, and the banksters have been and will continue to work together, and it's like a revolving door, and it's no good for us. So we as people have to help ourselves. We have to bring back critical thinking, Buck, and say, okay, how is all this going to affect me? What do I need to do to offset these policies that are going to start taking more money out of my pocket?
Makes sense. Sherry, where can we learn more about your work?
I do have a website, sherrypeeljackson.com, but I have started trying to educate people for, I have these large packages, $25,000, $55,000, for people to walk with me in learning all of this, international real estate, all these things that I'm doing. I have properties in Costa Rica and I take people over. But for the everyday person, I have what's called the Escape the Rat Race Challenge. And for your audience, I have a special. So if they type in Escape the Rat Race Challenge /special, then they'll have a special. I have $200 off. And it's basically a 3-day mini course where I teach them these things, how to keep, protect, and grow what they earn so that they can escape the rat race. And they get to ask me questions if they're joining at the platinum level. They get to ask me questions for 3 days. And at the end of it, I teach them how to actually start a business. Now, so much to it, but more than just what a regular person would tell you. For example, a lot of people are told, okay, you can just go and start your business wherever you are, but it may not be that. You may need to start your business in a different state. People don't even think about that. There are states that are better for privacy and other reasons. I only have one. I'm in Georgia. I only have one company here in Georgia. I have one footprint, and that's that company. I have other companies that don't have a footprint. So these are protective things. They're, to protect you from people that are predators, whether it be the IRS or other people. This is the United States of America. We have 5% of the world's population, but we have 70% of the world's lawsuits. There are more lawyers in Jacksonville, Florida than the whole of Japan. And what they do is they like to sue. So you have to protect your assets, protect what you've earned. So I teach all of that in the different classes that I have. The Escape the Rat Race is basically, that challenge is basically a jump start for people that haven't started a business, don't understand why they need to start a business. But it's pretty clear and evident based on what's going on here in the States and in other countries like Canada, Australia, that we have some problems, and there are solutions to these problems that your people, your audience, and others that are thinking people can get out of.
Thank you so much for being on Wealth Formula Podcast, Sherry, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, just a quick disclaimer. I don't know. That was a interesting conversation with someone who's sort of like-minded, but I'm not affiliated in any way with her products, nor do I have any financial benefit. So anyway, if you do check it out, just know that it's, do your own due diligence, as I would say for anybody, not just Ms. Jackson. Or Dr. Jackson. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the show. Want to remind you again, if you have not done so, please consider joining the Accredited Investor Club at wealthformula.com. If you're interested, we have lots of interesting things going on these days, particularly in the distressed real estate area. That's it for me this week on Wealth Formula Podcast. This is Buck Joffrey signing off.
Thank you for listening to the Wealth Formula Podcast. Visit us on the web at wealthformula.com. The information contained in this podcast are opinions, not fact. As always, consult your own financial team before making any investment. See you next time.